everybody, and welcome back to my series on karmic secrets through the horoscope. We did a previous video in this series on the 12th house and how it ties into karmic secrets. If you'd like to go back and review some of that video, you can do that at the link that you'll see above. We're going to continue today looking at Ketu and Rahu, the south node and the north node, respectively, in something called the D60 or the Shastyamsha chart. And if you would like to experience this particular approach, which can be applied to any area of your life, because in Vedic astrology, we have charts or horoscopes for pretty much every single area of your life. There's a chart we look at in relation to career, which is called the D10. There are two charts that we look at for finances, which are the D2, the Hora chart, and the D4, the Chaturtamsha chart, right? And we can explore your karma in any of those divisional charts. And at present, I have a very special offer open on 6 one-hour consultations with me so that you can explore your personal horoscope very deeply. And also you get 2 free years of membership in Easy Astrology Society. That is my online Vedic astrology learning community, which gives you access to 300 plus hours of Vedic astrology video courses, live question and answer sessions twice monthly, and a live monthly masterclass with me. All of that, 6 sessions and 2 years of Easy Astrology Society for only $333 at the link that you'll see above. So let's jump right in. So we were exploring in the last class, and we were talking about the karmic patterns in the horoscope, and we were talking about how something called the Shastyamsha deities as well as the nakshatras tie in with that. And I'm going to warn you, you're going to see my head bounce up and down here for a moment, mainly because I want to open up a chart for you and put it over in the corner of the window, which I hadn't done yet. So we'll just put that over there. There we go. So the Shastyamsha deities and something I work with called the house cusp nakshatras, they tie in very intricately in order to weave together a specific story. Now, this story is multi-layered, I'm going to say that, and it's multi-dimensional. So quite often there are many different possibilities of what these energies are creating. All of those are pretty much accurate as per the individual who's experiencing the karmic patterns in their life, because what we're really looking at is a conglomerate of karmic energies compiled over several lifetimes. We're not specifically looking necessarily at one specific lifetime. We're looking at several lifetimes put together. And so what we're understanding is more of a karmic story. So let's explore this particular chart in relation to the D60 chart first. And the D60, once again, called the Shastyamsha chart, gives an idea of a layer of karma that is beneath the karmic patterns in the main birth chart. So it's like peeling away at layers of karma, only we start with this deeper layer first. In this person's horoscope, they have Ketu in what's called a Garala Shastyamsha and in Aquarius. So Garala Shastyamshas generally relate to the concept of, as you'll see here on the screen, poison, or a person being in a toxic situation. In terms of this person's horoscope, the toxic situation fits very deeply. Ketu is in Anuradha nakshatra. Anuradha gives an immense amount of devotion. And as you see in this person's horoscope, Saturn, which is connected to Anuradha, is really strong. It's in a condition that's called Mula Trikona, which makes a planet very potent. And it's in what's called a Apampati Shastyamsha. Apa means the ocean. Apampati is the lord of the ocean. So when we have a strong planet in Apampati, it relates to a concept of vastness. So this individual had a vast level of devotion for something or someone, and that vast level of devotion was something that on a certain level may have become somewhat toxic in this individual's life. It created problems. It may have even created problems for other people. Now, when we understand this more deeply, what we're going to see is Saturn, which rules Anuradha, is in Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, right? Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra is both revelatory in its nature. It will quite often reveal areas of life where we're not paying attention to things, where we get confronted with our own ignorance of how, a different path might have brought a different result. In addition to that, it has a tremendous altruistic streak. In terms of this person's horoscope, because it's somebody that I know, they were very deeply humanitarian. And yes, through the process of the situation that was tending to unfold for the individual, they were also shown areas of their life where they could have been a little more attentive. Okay. The other people who were involved in this person's life in the present day, because we're looking at karmic patterns, even though it may refer to lifetimes of energy, it's obviously going to be very important in terms of the individual's present life as well, because people tend to repeat these particular patterns. So when there is a Ketu-Saturn connection, the individual inwardly has a strong need for stability and security. So they will latch on to something. Quite often in this person's specific situation, because of Ketu's connection to Saturn, right, they would tend to ignore their own needs for the sake of a situation. Right? They would devote themselves wholeheartedly to something because they thought that it was something that was going to create a great level of stability or security. And they equally thought that this was what other people in the situation would have wanted for them, or would have wanted from them, I should say. And because of that, they were seen as somebody who was authoritative or who was perhaps a little bit assertive, which is another common quality that is connected to Ketu-Saturn conjunctions. When other people saw them as being somewhat authoritative, we began to have in the individual's life a pattern between Ketu and Mercury play out. So Ketu here is in its interaction with Mercury. Mercury rules the 5th and the 8th houses from Ketu. So those issues around the person's authoritativeness equally would have brought to the surface potentially some difficulties around a child, or their actions may have brought difficulty upon a child which they didn't intend and which they felt very guilty about. And both of those things were very relevant in the individual's life. And quite often with Ketu Mercury connections in the horoscope, Mercury is the planet of, on many levels, perception. It's also our sense of discernment, but equally it's a communicative planet. So with Ketu Mercury connections, the individual will quite often try to explain their actions. And the deeper they go into trying to explain their actions to another, the more the other person begins to A, not understand them, or B, they tend to think that the person is hiding something or covering something up. Ketu here is connected to the 10th house. So the individual wanted to do a good job with something. Chitra quite often makes us want to do acts of renown. It also tends to make us get somewhat deluded by the situations that we're in. It's important that we examine Mars in connection with this. Mars is in what's called a Kalapavaka Shastyamsha. So Kalapavaka energy, time of fire, it relates to situations that are getting a little bit out of control, and the individual, perhaps as a father in this particular situation, because Ketu's conjunct the 10th, and the 10th house, believe it or not, is one's father. Quite often we refer to the 9th house as father in astrology, but the 9th house is the influence of both parents. 10th house is specifically the influence of father. In this individual's life, they wanted to do a good job in relation to being a father. And what ended up happening in relation to that was their passion got in the way of their judgment. They didn't pay attention. It might have been better in the situation for them to take actions in a different direction. But at the same time, there was a deep level of devotion to the individual's child that kept them connected to a situation ultimately that was proving very toxic to them. The individual, because they were staying in a situation, because with this, we're taking a look at the fact that Ketu here being connected to the 10th cusp, we've got Saturn, which rules Ketu in the first with Ketu. We were just exploring that a moment ago. And the 11th from the ascendant. The 11th cusp here is connected to Vishaka. Vishaka causes us quite often to straddle two different worlds and kind of keep ourselves bound to a past commitment rather than moving forward. And that was the instance with this individual's particular situation. They were bound to a particular situation and weren't able to really move on from a situation due to their interaction with the child or due to their connection with the child. So after we explore Ketu in the chart, and I'm just giving you a brief précis of this because it's so incredibly deep, this particular process. Quite often, there are many different planets that are involved in this assessment, as we always have to look at the interactions between the nodes and the planets that they interact with. In this particular instance, we're working with sign aspects, because when you're approaching things in the divisional charts, you want to work with what are called sign aspects rather than working with planetary aspects, because planetary aspects are generally astronomical by nature, and the only divisional chart where astronomy is taking place is actually the main birth chart or the Rashi. So it's a little more accurate in assessment to work with sign aspects in the divisional charts. I'll apologize for nerding out here and perhaps getting a little too technical, but for those of you who are astrology enthusiasts, you'll probably fully understand what I'm talking about. So with Rahu in Leo, quite often Ketu in Aquarius causes a person to do something for the sake of respect or attention or validation. And this person wanted to be respected for their actions in terms of taking care of those people that they felt deeply devoted to. Rahu's path will pull the individual in the direction of going, does this inspire you? Is this the path that you really want to be on? If it's not the path that you really want to be on, then you need to explore a different direction. So when we look at Rahu in Leo, that's obviously going to be connected to the sun. As you'll see here, you'll notice that the sun is in what's called Avamsakshaya Shastyamsha, which means family decay. So if the individual would have walked away, the individual's family would have fallen apart. Whilst the individual was staying connected, there were equally problems with the family, because Rahu and Ketu really are one entity. They're just split in half. And so you'll quite often encounter a little bit of the scenario of one of the nodes within the other. We were just exploring Ketu before, and a lot of the family decay issues were also coming to the surface through that particular interaction. So to stay with the situation would have been toxic. To walk away from the situation would have equally been toxic. So when we go in and we explore a little more of this path, Rahu here is connected to the fourth house. The fourth house can relate to home. The fourth house is also another family-oriented house, right? And in this particular instance, the fourth cusp is in Ashwini. The individual was needing to decide dharmically what to do in regards to a living situation. In addition to that, they were needing to decide dharmically what to do in terms of one's security and stability. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term dharma, it means the path of righteousness. So the individual was having to try to figure out what the righteous thing to do would have been in relation to a particular toxic situation. The second house, in addition to finances, deals with the family that we have responsibility to. The second house here is in Shravana Nakshatra. So this particular individual found himself in a position where, due to his devotion to his family, he always tried to listen and tune in, which is a quality of Shravana, to what his family might have needed. Going in that particular direction wasn't something that necessarily made him happy, though. And as we see, the moon here is in what's called a Dandabrit Shastyamsha, which means carrying a staff. Now, in ancient times, a staff was also sometimes used as a weapon in order to punish somebody or to defend oneself against somebody. So this individual carried a lot of resentment for the fact that they were listening to their family's needs when they themselves wanted to do something else. But equally at the same time, they felt a tremendous sense of responsibility to family. So it's always a mixed bag in terms of these emotional situations. So the individual had a tremendous amount of devotion, and we'll see with relation to this that the sun is in the sixth from the ascendant and in the second position from Rahu. So the individual served one's family and was very productive and devoted. The sixth cusp here is in Rohini, which will make an individual very protective, very caring, and equally wanting to grow and put a lot of labor and, in addition to that, love into serving one's family. But equally, there was a level of resentment. Again, we're getting this Dandabrit Shastyamsha coming to the surface in this particular scenario. So as you can see, we can weave together quite a karmic story in relation to the horoscope by exploring the nodal axis. So as we were talking about Ketu and Mercury the last time, now we have an interaction between Rahu and Mercury, which will equally bring some doubt. It also gives an individual a tremendous amount of innovative energy. Rahu and Mercury, when they connect, create innovation. And so what would this individual become innovative around? So we need to see where Mercury is related in relation to Rahu, right? So Mercury rules the second from Rahu and equally the 11th from Rahu. So as we know, the second and the 11th, and if you don't know, I'll tell you, the second and the 11th are financial related houses. But the second and the 11th together also deal with one's responsibility to one's family, or the future responsibility to one's family, I should say, or the responsibility to the future of one's family. So in relation to that, with the 11th cusp in Vishaka, which deals with that portal energy that I was telling you about before. The individual has one part of themselves committed to the past, the other part of them that wants to move onward. So quite often with Vishaka energy, the individual is trying to shift a situation onward. But while they do that, they're having to kind of be in two different worlds simultaneously. So in order to try to create a better future for this individual's family, one where there would have been a greater level of separation in the situation between the individual whose chart we're working with and the child's mother, the individual had, a large level of commitment to both the past situation, in addition to trying to move the situation onward in order to create a less toxic situation, as we were talking about in relation to this horoscope. So because the individual was in a situation that was somewhat toxic for them, we need to see Vishaka, which is connected to Jupiter. We need to see what Shastyamsha Jupiter's in, which is again a Dandabrit Shastyamsha. So the individual again felt a level of resentment in terms of having to kind of stay stuck in a situation within which they were ready to move on because they sensed that there might have been a better way with which to work with this particular scenario that the individual was dealing with. I know that's a lot. We just unpacked a lot in this particular horoscope. This technique is really exceptionally powerful. It will tend to bring a lot of stuff to the surface for the client who's working with this particular technique. It's exceptionally therapeutic and provides a great opportunity for dialogue between the astrologer and the client. And it helps each individual to understand themselves and their patterns to a very deep level. In this individual's life, they would have had to make decisions between inspiration. What was really inspiring them? Was it inspiring them to be stuck within the situation? Did they feel it was dharmically correct? In this individual's life, on a certain level, they did, because they stayed committed to it. Every time they looked at the situation, they said, no, this is right. I'm actually inspired to do it. For the most part, it just creates a level of tiredness and resentment for me from time to time, because, hey, let's face it, no situation's perfect. So this particular technique will help the individual to make decisions karmically in regards to how they want to move forward, because it's ultimately our decisions that decide how we begin to resolve the karmic patterns that are in our horoscope, right? Whether we're going to come to peace with previous decisions, whether we're going to look at previous decisions and go, well, that was wrong, and now I want to correct it and go in this different direction. All of those are applicable, because the path to resolving our karma is meant to be guided from the space of innocence, which resides within our heart, that which flows naturally from us. I'm not talking about the part of your heart that's connected to your emotions, or I should say the part of your heart that's just connected to your emotions. I'm talking about that innocence, that part of you that knows who you are, that understands your path, that understands your mission, and that naturally goes, would I do anything else in this scenario besides going in this particular direction? That's what I mean when I'm talking about the heart. So resolving the karma in the horoscope is meant to be guided from that space of natural innocence, which resides here. So if you'd like to explore your own horoscope in this specific manner, once again, I do have that 6 consultation package that gives you 6 one-hour consultations plus 2 free years of membership to my online Vedic astrology learning community, Easy Astrology Society, all available for $333 that you can find at the link above. That's going to do it for this look at karmic secrets in the horoscope through Ketu and Rahu and their interaction in the D60. Until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye for now.